the whole apocalypticism that they're obsessed with leads to, like today, like people are, oh, Jesus come quickly, Jesus come quickly, which is a horrible position to hold. The book of Revelations itself says that the blood of the martyrs is crying from under the altar in heaven. And the only reason why it's not yet heeded is that God still gives us time for as many of us to repent as possible. So to hurry it up is not just, unbiblical, it's also cruel, and shows a level of narcissism that comes with the faith alone position, where you sign, your name on the saved, charter, and there you go. Now you're safe. So you're going to be playing a harp on a cloud, and the others can pound sand.
Now, keep in mind, so these goobers believe that they can do certain geopolitical actions, like trying to, originally in the 1830s, the idea was they could be missionaries to Israel, convert the Jews. That would bring about the end of the world, the return of Christ, right? What does Crowley think about the book of Revelation? He thinks it's a ritual book that if you do it, it brings about the end of the world. So they have the same idea that you can do these actions like this is a technology, right?
Yeah.
To hasten the end of the world. Even Crowley has that view.
That's really interesting, Jay. Not to go off topic, but Crowley's, I would say, intimate relationship, I don't know what else included in that, between him and Jack Parsons, who basically tried to materialize that particular view, but there was definitely some sort of ritual in his combustion experiments and rocketry. It's kind of interesting.
No, he was trying to.
Oh, was he? Was he trying to do something?
The Babylon working is an end of the world working.
See, it's crazy how this stuff is like. I wish I had my truther music cue, because it is really connected. Yeah, totally. Works every time.
Everybody loved that at the live event. That was great.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, we're going to be doing another one. Hopefully, Jay will get a date. And if you need any help finding a location,
event, but
yeah, I'll try to. I'll just keep looking. I'm going to keep going with this, and you guys can determine how much theology you want to do, even when we get into some of the modern stuff. Like I said, it's still important. But if there's any more you want to do, I can keep going as long as you want here.
I want to look at some of these in a little bit more detail before we move on. The millennium itself is a standard premillennial conception. The idea that Christ reigns for a 1,000-year period of time, reigns from Jerusalem. All of this he shares with other premillennialists who basically developed similar ideas at that time in history. The millennium is immediately preceded by the second advent. Christ comes before the millennium, hence the term premillennialism. However, something unique to Darby's view of this is that the church is not present. All the other premillennial eschatologies see Christ reigning for this 1,000 years through the people who are the ones advocating this particular eschatology. So if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, he's going to rule through the Adventists. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, he's going to rule through the witnesses. If you're a Mormon, he's going to rule through the Mormons, you see. But Darby has a different view, a very stunning idea that the church is gone.
And this is to fulfill the promise, the so-called unfulfilled promises to the Jews.
Okay.
This is why Jesus. So the church is raptured. Mm-hmm. Jesus comes back, rules in Israel for the Jews to fulfill those promises, while the church is in heaven.
So he's declaring the church is gone, right? Does that mean so the church is no longer physical, nor is it existing metaphysically in a sense? That's the view he's saying.
In heaven, right? So for example, the beginning of the tribulation, if you're a pre-tribulation rapture person, you believe mm-hmm. that when the 7-year tribulation starts, the church has been raptured. It's been taken out. And so the Antichrist comes, right? The Jews convert. The Jews then start converting everyone. Mm-hmm. And then Jesus comes back, destroys Antichrist, and then rules for 1,000 years. And mm-hmm. then there's the great white throne judgment and resurrection. So the church is in heaven as Jesus rules on earth.
Gotcha. I'd like to make a couple of points here. So one very basic critique of dispensationalism and this pre-millennial view is that it says that Christ rules for 1,000 years. And again, this was not an uncommon term to use for a lot, like 1,000 is a lot. To us today, maybe not so much, because we live in times of tremendous excess of anything you can think of. But it just means a long time. We have that even in Daniel, that after a long time, we will get back to like the second coming or something. But it says that after near the end of that reign, because the strong man is bound, and that refers to Satan, that his reins must be loosened a bit. What bloody point is there in Christ coming back, ruling 1,000 years, and just let Satan loose? Like, from our perspective, Christ is ruling right now. The church is alive, with all the problems that entails. But near the end of this long reign, the reins of Satan will be loosened a bit, so things will get rougher. That is not to say I don't understand why people are so egocentric that they think, oh, now is the end of the world, and they find any single tidbit, which is a very, very Protestant way of thinking, oh, this has happened, so now I will connect it somehow. World War II was a great place to think things are going to end. And we don't know. There was a guy who called in on this stream while I was on and said, do you know, this is the first time so many Jews are back in, Israel, or the land that is described in the Bible as promised to Israel. Okay, who says they will stay there? You don't know what's going to happen, right? But they keep latching onto these things and use it as this, like tarot readings or whatever.
Well, Posh, he was saying is basically bagel prepping. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
like they're doing bagel. Okay.
Preparing the water for the bagel.
Gotcha,
yeah. But, they have this idea that, and use it as a techne, like, Jay described. Crowley had his own view on that. But there is no sense in it why Satan would be loosened a bit, at the end of the millennial reign. So that's a very common one you can all take with you, and you don't need who knows how grand a knowledge of theology to give them that example. Yeah. But again, like with all types of these niche Protestant schools, they don't really go for logic. It's similar to Islam, Allah knows best. You don't need to describe anything. Who needs God? Who needs to justify what God does?
Yeah. Also, Josh, the modern era with technology, you think it could be in our favor to get like a rigid, narrow truth out there, but it actually works against us. That, like you said, these people who are these apocalypticismos, they can piece together things and find things. Oh, did you see that? They're all going back to Israel. Oh, did you see the sign? Did you see the Olympics? And they're just kind of like constantly in this state of like fielding quick bits of information, digital Post-it notes, and filling up their basement, right? And not that they're even aware of these views, but they're still, they're actually interacting with this paradigm that we're critiquing right now without knowing it.
And another parallel, and this is going to be important for the geopolitical aspects of it, another similarity with Islam. Islam teaches that Islam will go out into the world, but it will retract like a snake, between the rocks. It's going to become so incredibly small again as it began. But it also talks about, we are strong, we will conquer everything, So you've got both sides of the dialectic. So you can go back and forth. Anything good that happens, you see, we're right because things are going well. If things go wrong, you see, we are right because things are not going well. Likewise, with these types of apocalyptic thinkers, anything that happens is proof that you are right.
Everything is, It's all,
there's no way to disprove it because they've captured both sides.
It's like climate change.
Yeah.
99. I'm going to read relevant ones for those of you Bob Chat or Super Chat, and it's not totally relevant. I will read it at the end. You can direct it to Posh or myself or Jay as well, but this one seems relevant. 999. If dispensationalist heresy is prominent in America, can we find any dispensationalists to obliterate in debates like yesterday. Yeah, shout out to Jay and Sam. You did very well. Highlight, by the way, they tried to pin you guys against each other. Sam geniusly just accepted heresy and said, "Pray for me." I thought that was a beautiful moment right there. It totally deflated their
well, we knew
there.
we knew they were going to do that. So from the outset, Sam had said before the debate, he was like, "I'm just going to say I don't know who's right on filioque and energies, whether Catholic or Orthodox." So,
yeah.
So I thought he was going to say that, but that ended up being a better rhetorical.
That was awesome. Yeah, that was awesome. And,
has he formally converted to any?
I don't think he's formally converted, but he says that he attends a Catholic church because they'll let him have the Eucharist, but he has to go through a catechumen process if he becomes Orthodox. And then he says, plus, I don't know whether Orthodox are right on papacy and filioque or not.
Okay, but he hasn't made a formal declaration.
Not
so
that I'm aware. He just goes there, yeah.
No, it's fine if he attends, but you have to get baptized, or at least, not christened, but you call it chrismated. Something needs to happen before you're formally part of it. And as far as I'm aware, he hasn't. So they were just, even though they have different understandings of Islam, they were trying to impose the same type of disparity between the two.
Plus the fart, Jay.
Oh yeah,
I mean, the fart
is one of the.
That was appeal to flatulence.
I mean, yeah, they're full of hot air. What does it tell you? Right?
That was funny. He didn't even flinch. Okay, we'll keep going here.
So you had somebody had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Real quick, there was somebody asked, is preterism the same as premillennial? No, preterism is just the idea that many prophecies about what people think of the end, Matthew 24, Luke 21, and even much of the book of Revelation, that it's about the things occurring in the days of the people experiencing it. So, for example, John, if you believe in the early date for the book of Revelation, was writing about the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. So many of those things, I don't think anybody really doubts, unless they're super evangelical, that some aspects of Matthew 24 and Luke 21 have to be about the destruction of the temple. There's actually a really good Orthodox publication on this too, called Apostasy and Antichrist from Jordanville Monastery. I think it's really hard to get because it's out of print, but there is a YouTube version of audio of this whole thing. So it's only about 40 pages, and all it is just collections of church fathers, elders, saints for the Orthodox Church talking about apostasy and Antichrist and end times. And it notes as well that much of what we are looking at in Luke 21 and Matthew 24 on page 22 is the fulfilled in 70 AD. It says, the Holy Fathers of the Church explain that these words at this point are about the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, which is a prototype of the future Great Tribulation and end of the world. So what happens here is that no dispensationalist believes in anything preterist at all. So that's what's often called partial preterism. That's what I mentioned earlier about the dating of some of the events of the book of Revelation and when it happened. That's different from premillennialism, which is about the 1,000-year reign. And does Jesus come back before he sets up a 1,000-year earthly reign, or is the 1,000-year reign typically called amillennialism, meaning that there's no literal millennium? It's just the reign of the church for an indefinite amount of time.
Right.
And Jay, that means Orthodox and Catholics are partial.
Well, if they dig into it. So, for example, I've got several Catholic commentaries in the book of Revelation 2, and the commentaries that I have do not talk about preterism. But I do have the Missal, the Roman Catholic Missal, the traditional Latin Mass Missal, which does mention preterist stuff. So it's just kind of like you got to dig, and there's not really official positions in anybody's church on specifics of end time stuff. It's kind of like, well, what did what did Chrysostom say? What did Cyril say? What did Athanasius say? Right. So we're looking at them. There's not like a papal statement on this stuff. It's just kind of like you got to dig to find stuff.
Yeah. Because this position was never popular in either Orthodoxy or Catholicism, and usually you get these statements after there's been some turmoil with people going for a position. But I wanted to mention, as far as partial preterism is concerned, it's a very consistent pattern in the Bible that God does something in a smaller sense, and then it comes to full fulfillment later on, like a sort of advanced payment. Exactly. So we get Israel, the old Israel, it is freed from slavery under Egypt and brought into the promised land, not fully by a man called Moses, but a man called Jesus, or Joshua, again in English. I won't complain about that too much, although it really irks me. Likewise, the full promise is then fulfilled by everyone who becomes part of the new Israel. The church is freed from slavery under sin, under Satan, under the prince of this world, and brought into the kingdom of God, not again by Mosaic law, but by a man called Jesus. So again, over and over again, we get these patterns. Likewise, we can see the destruction of Jerusalem as a prototype, let's say, for what can happen later on. That does not mean like any serious church structure. Let's say, I don't want to use the term church willy-nilly, but doesn't just look around for any geopolitical event, any scientific advancement, and just go, oh, well, there we are, chapter 7.
Here we go, turn the page. Yeah, turn the comic book page.
The trumpet is beginning to sound,
yeah, softly. Totally. Yeah.
Like a fade-in is starting.
Yeah, you set the stage, right? Getting your costumes.
There's another key to this, too, that you can see, and the Orthodox have an advantage in this regard because we have first, second, and third Maccabees in our Bible, and that actually helps us with this eschatology, because a lot of the passages where Jesus talks about what's Luke 21, Matthew 24, what's called the Olivet Discourse, those passages refer to an abomination of desolation, the abomination, right? What is this? How do we know what this is? Well, if we know the Old Testament, we know it really well, because we know, for example, the temple, Israel was destroyed 586 BC, right? The temple gets destroyed, gets defiled. That's the first defiling or the abomination of desolation, right? When the Babylonians come in. Then, people don't know this, but if you read the Maccabees, you know that there's another mirrored abomination. This is the abomination of desolation of the next temple that Daniel writes about. So when Daniel writes about this famous abomination of desolation, this is after 586 BC, right? Daniel's writing about what's going to happen in this future Maccabean period. We get an abomination of the desolation of the Maccabees. And then in third Maccabees, there's another abomination with the Egyptian ruler Ptolemy. So we get another, so there's mirroring abominations of defilings of the temple, right? So if Jesus in his day is referring to another one, what would be the next, the only possible fulfillment would be the destruction of the temple, which happens 40 years after Jesus talks about that, 70 AD. So we know that 70 AD has to be one of these clear fulfillments of the abomination of desolation. And the last thing I would say on that is just that the future desolation, whatever that is, that's debated. Some of the church fathers think that there will be a rebuilt temple, which would be Antichrist's temple, and because it would be the reinstitution of the sacrifices that were done away with and fulfilled in Christ, animal sacrifices. Many church fathers, saints say that would be a sign of the end, because that would be Antichrist's temple. Some church fathers say, well, the final apostasy, the great apostasy that we read about in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, has to be something not in an actual temple, but in the church. So there's a bit of a debate amongst exegetes and theologians, church fathers, as to whether the great apostasy and when Paul, it's the text where Paul says the man of sin will stand up in the temple in the church of God, proclaim himself to be God. Does that mean a spiritual temple of the church where a man within the church causes an apostasy, or does it mean an actual literal rebuilt temple in Israel? I tend to actually think, I think there will be an apostasy of the church whenever that is, but I tend to think that it is talking about a rebuilt temple.
Jay, I just want to remind you that if something's debated, that means there is no truth about it. So I just wanted to.
According to Daniel, that's correct.
that was really funny.
And by the way, he knows good and well, when you get into the nuances of Islamic debates on the attributes of Allah, he knows good and well they debate this all day long, and it's not clear and simple. That's just a sales pitch.